2018. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 9th, 2018, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 9th, 2018, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 9th, 2018, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility has 2 emergency exits which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Thank you, Eileen. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Amata.
Present.
Mr. Hughes.
Present.
Mr. Mertens.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Mr. Posh.
Here.
Mr. San Clemente.
Here.
Mr. Orozco.
Here.
Mr. Moretti.
Present.
And Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Tropoli.
Thank you. Swears your testimony you give this evening, you truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So, right, the record should reflect that at the end, Mr. Mallon, Ms. Spiro, Ms. Beam, and Mr. Cusser all swore to the evening.
Thank you. Approval of minutes.
There are no minutes to approve this evening.
Thank you. Vouchers?
Yes, we have one voucher from Mr. Tropoli.
Okay. We'll pass it down and we'll vote on it at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Correspondence.
Yes, I do have some correspondence besides anything that was emailed to the members. First thing first, the application on tonight's agenda for Robert and Dolores Kowalski needs to be carried to May 21st, 2018 with no further notice. The board attorney has a conflict, so we need a conflict attorney for that night, and their attorney has agreed to May 21st.
Okay. Is anyone in the audience for case number BA 18-02, Robert and Dolores Kowalski? This case will be carried to May 21st, 2018 with no further notice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other application that's on tonight, BA 1708, Route 9 Hardscape, Supply Yard LLC. There was a problem with their notice, so they're going to reschedule also for May 21st, but they'll have to notice, so that's not a problem.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience for BA 17-08, Route 9 Hardscape Supply Yard LLC? This case will be carried till what date?
May 21st.
May 21st.
But that will be noticed.
2018, and they will be noticing that case, that application.
And the last item I have is an email from Allison Serrani. She's the Deputy Township Clerk. She has asked that I please remind everybody that she sent an email last week regarding the financial disclosure statements that you're responsible for filling out. The deadline is April 30th, so please make sure to go on the website, check your email, and it will not be from me, it will be from Allison Serrani, the Deputy Clerk.
Okay. Y'all be sure and do that because get in real trouble if you don't.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I have one thing that I wanted to advise the board. May 7th, we have an application before the board that's coming in. It's L&L Paving. I want to advise the board just individually. You can go individually, no more than 2 people together. You know, but I strongly request that you go to the site and visit that site before they come in, because it is going to be somewhat confusing on testimony, and if you do visit the site, you can kind of see what's going on, and, preferably during the week while they're in operations, but they are open on Saturdays also. Just go to the scale house, identify yourself, and just ask them, that you want to walk around and take a look at what's going on. Okay, I strongly advise that. That way you're familiar with what is going on.
Right.
Mr.
And Mr. Nansen, just echoing what you said, just so the board understands, part of the application of any land use matter before this board involves the applicant giving the board members individually the ability to do a site review. So there's already approval. Of course, we'll let the attorney know that it could happen, but when you get to the site, just check in, tell them why you're there, identify yourself as a member of the zoning board, and there should be no problem. If there is, you should report it to our administrative secretary, and I'll take care of it from there.
There's a scale on the site, and there's a little house there. The manager of the site is in that house. So, I go to the scale first and just let them know that you're there as a zoning board member, that you wanted to walk through the site. Okay? But no more than 2 board members at a time on the site, please. So you can either coordinate that with Eileen, let them know when you're going to go. That way we don't have 2 board members or more than 2 board members on the site at any one time. Okay?
Mr. Chair, I will also call the applicant's attorney and let him know that board members will be visiting.
Yeah, that's why I want to go through you. That way you can contact the applicant's attorney. You can advise them so-and-so is going to be there at what time and when. Okay?
Okay.
Board members have any questions about that? Any questions about that?
And this is for, I didn't catch the first part.
I didn't catch what you were saying at the first part. Where is it for?
What
Paving,
this is
L&L
for,
paving?
L&L paving.
Oh, okay.
So
89 Yellowbrook Road.
89 Yellowbrook Road, the old pipe plant,
Old Kirk concrete plant?
the old pipe plant. If you want to go out in 2s, that's fine, but you got to coordinate that with Eileen, please.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have. I do want to thank all the prayers and everything for me being out of commission, and I apologize for the attire, but I can't button buttons yet. So, but I really appreciate all the phone calls and thank you guys. Appreciate it. Okay,
That's it.
that's it. Okay. Resolutions. Case number BA 1805, Donna Vlahakis. Vlahakis, as attorney in fact for Zenovia Vlahakis. Resolution granting certificate of nonconformity. Eligible voters, Mr. Amata, Mr. Hughes, Mertens, O'Donnell, Orozco, Moretti, and Posh. I'm good.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Orozco,
I'll second that motion.
seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Amata?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolutions memorialized. Thank you.
Thank you. Application before the board, case number BA 18-03, Clearview Equities LLC. Bulk variance, construction, single-family dwelling with septic system. The application was heard on March 26, 2018, when it was carried to April 9, 2018, with no further notice. And I did review this, but I am not certifying as a vote. I'm not going to vote it, but I will run the meeting. I know that you had a task to do before the board. There will be no additional testimony placed on the record from, I gather, your professionals, unless it's a requirement from that.
Sure.
But, and it will not be reopened to public.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I know you weren't here last time, and I'm glad you feel better now. My name is Jeffrey Chang from law firm Halbram Pape. I had the privilege of doing the bulk of the testimony with my professionals during the last meeting. And at that time, I'll refresh everyone's memory, the last thing that I was tasked to do was to write letters to the adjacent neighbors to offer the property for sale at fair market value. And hopefully you have received it. And I did a certification this morning to show exactly what I did. I can certainly just highlight it very briefly.
Were those letters certified, sent out certified?
Yes.
Okay.
So on March 23rd, I did send the letters out to Joseph and Sherry Reiner, owners of Lot 3, Joseph and Devorah Phillip, Lot 6, Alexander Leo Pavlev, Lot 7, and a copy of my letter is attached. I did a regular and certified mail, and actually one of the letters, strangely, for Joseph and Sherry Reiner, owners of Lot 3, bounced back to us. We did use the list of property owners. It was current. It bounced back to me, so in response, the next day, on April 4th, I submitted overnight, regular and certified, to the actual address of that home. We did some search, and we found the physical Alexander Avenue address, just to make sure that it did get delivered to whoever was living at that home. And I think I showed an exhibit. The overnight mail was delivered to the front door, and since that point, I have not received any communication from any of the neighbors regarding the offer to sell at fair market value. And I certified it to it this morning, and it's, I think, before you. And that's really the only thing I believe that I was tasked to do at that meeting.
Mr. Tropoli.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chang had shared with me before he had filed the notices, the actual legal content. I'm satisfied that he stated clearly and concisely and factually what he was doing, what he was asking for by noticing the adjacent property owners. So his notices were proper. The response, as I understand it, is on the record. And I would point out, Mr. Chair, because you weren't here before to hear the application, that Mr. and Mrs. Phillips actually appeared, and the board may recall that they appeared, and there was quite some colloquy between the board. And I think if you look around this evening, I don't believe anybody's here on the application. I'll ask the board to take a look at that. But I'm satisfied that proper notice has been made, and that, in fact, council has not received any indication from any of the adjacent property owners which he could possibly have gotten land from in order to make this a more conforming application. So therefore, in my opinion, Mr. Chair, the application is closed. If you accept the testimony without any further comment, I don't believe there's any public here, and I think, quite frankly, the matter is ready for a vote.
I'm going to request, Mr. Posh, do you have any, was that basically pretty much it?
I think the only other thing that crosses my mind is the period of time since the letter was sent out until today. Is that adequate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm satisfied.
Service has been made, and matter of fact, he went over and above by actually doing, I think, an overnight, knowing that the list was improper, actually endeavored to do more diligent work and getting it to where it needed to go. So from a legal perspective, I think it's ready for a vote.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this application. All the lots in the area all seem to be the same, and my motion is to approve it, like I said, based on all the conditions that were set forth.
Okay.
Mr. O'Donnell, that would be subject to compliance with whatever the Board of Health would require, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Mr. Merton. Okay, eligible voters are Mata, Hughes, Mertens, O'Donnell, Orozco, Moratti, and Posh.
Mr. Armada?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
And Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Case number BA 17-15, Sea-Free Plaza LLC, preliminary and final major site plan, use variance, ancillary bulk variance. Application is Sea-Free Plaza LLC is applicant and owners seeking preliminary and final major site plan use variance and ancillary bulk variance approval to construct a multi-use office warehouse commercial building with the gross floor area of 24,881 square feet on premises known as Block 169, lots 1.12 at intersection of Highway 33 and Okerson Road. Expiration date, April 24th, 2018. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thomas J. Hirsch, representing the applicant, Seafree Plaza, LLC. I don't like to take too long on an opening statement, let my witnesses do the talking, but just to put this in perspective, as the board is probably aware, this site was previously approved for development some years back, around 2006 or 7, I think. At that time, it was approved for just under 15,000 square feet of retail space on the first floor and 2,000 square feet of space on the second floor. The variances were granted, site plans were submitted and approved. My client was not part of that application. My client is a subsequent owner of the property. And essentially, as you'll hear from our professionals, we believe this application is actually more in conformance, although we still need relief from your variances than that first application that, as it sits today, is granted. The proposed building now is 24,881 square feet, so it's getting bigger, and with office, mixed-use office, warehouse, and commercial uses, which we'll discuss in a little while. So that's the nature of this. We're kind of springboarding off of this other approval that was there, but there's some substantial changes, we think, improvements to the site. So with that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call our first witness.
Why don't we call all of your witnesses and
All of
we'll
them?
swear them all in at one time?
That's fine. You guys can, John, Steve, we may call you at some point, so get them all out of the way just in case.
Okay, gentlemen, you raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. And sir, starting with you, may we have your name and spell your last name, please?
Sure. John Slazik, S-L-A-Z-Y-K.
Thank you.
Steve Gattoni, G-A-T-T-O-N-I.
Thank you.
James Higgins, H-I-G-G-I-N-S.
Thank you, Joe.
William Fitzgerald, F-I-T-Z-G-E-R-A-L-D.
Thank you, Bill.
Brian Fitzgerald, F-I-T-Z-G-E-R.
Sorry, the last name?
Fitzgerald.
Threw you for a loop there.
It's a test.
Just checking my ears. Thank you. All sworn, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. As you can see, the witnesses are just done. Were just sworn in. We have two of the members of the LLC here tonight in case we need to deal with any specific questions in terms of their operation. Mr. Fitzgerald's our engineer, Mr. Higgins our planner, and the other younger Mr. Fitzgerald is our architect.
Okay.
Not a whole lot of architecture involved here, but to the extent we have architectural questions, we also brought him.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Fitzgerald, you're now under oath already.
Put that where I can read it off.
Oh, yeah, the exhibit list.
You want to use this if you're on the board?
Sure. That'd
Thank
be
you.
great. Thanks so much.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Hertz, you want to qualify?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Fitzgerald, would you give the board the benefit of your educational professional background?
Yes, I graduated from University of Delaware, have a master's degree from Seton Hall, bachelor's in civil engineering, I'm sorry. I've been a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey since 1981, professional planner. I've been before the board, been a few years, but Hungry Puppy was the last time I was here. And
We accept your credentials.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Mr. Fitzgerald, you prepared the site plan that's before the board?
I did.
Okay, and you've been out to the site and are familiar with the site, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the surrounding area, I guess.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so why don't we start with essentially what's there now, which is essentially nothing, I
Well,
guess.
this is it's essentially the entirety of Block 169.01. It's located, has frontage along Business Highway 33, and also has frontage on Okerson Road, and what used to be Old Okerson Road is now Michael Curtin Lane. It's approximately triangular in shape. It's about a little over 2.5 acres in size. fundamentally, there's not much on it. There's not even a tree larger than 4-inch in caliper. It's been just scrub vegetation. It may have been farmed in the past, I'm not sure, but it hasn't been utilized in many years for anything other than just lay fallow.
So I'm clear, that you do have a board up. Is
Yes.
that,
This is Highway 33, which is the northerly frontage, if you will. Okerson Road is the westerly frontage, and Michael Curtin Lane it would be the southerly frontage.
Well,
And is that
excuse me, that Michael Curtin Lane, that doesn't go all the way out to 33, does it?
I believe the right-of-way does, but the pavement does not. The pavement stops about 150 feet shy of the roadway, but according to the tax map, Mr. Chairman, the right-of-way does go through.
Okay.
And
So
that board
basically,
exists-
it's like a paper street then? now,
Yeah,
at
yes,
this point.
it's a paper street for the last 150 feet or so, easternmost 150 feet.
Okay, thank you.
that board's part of the existing site plan?
Right, all of the boards that I will put up are identical copies of the sheets that you have in A10.
Okay, so they're already all signed?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't need to sign additional?
No.
Okay,
Okay, that's why I brought it up.
thank you.
I want to see how you want to handle it. Thank you.
All right, so if you...
Bill?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Tom, I'm sorry. If you could just identify what sheet it is, like
Yeah.
sheet 1 of A10 or, whatever it might be, that would be helpful.
As I was just going to say, I'm not sure exactly what you have in front of you, but this is the second sheet of A10 that I'm showing you right now, which is a map of existing conditions.
All right. All right. Now, this was, as I pointed out briefly in my opening remarks, there was a prior approval for this site, correct?
That's correct.
And you reviewed that prior site plan, prior resolution?
I did. We had reviewed it for the current applicants as they went through the process of purchasing the site. We reviewed what could be subsequently done per the ordinance on 2 or 3 occasions in that I believe they purchased it approximately 10 years ago, plus or minus a year. Several proposals for developing the site, and then we have again reviewed it in connection with the development application that's before you now.
And you have an exhibit that you can hand out to the board relative to the prior approval?
I do. I have an 8.5 by 11 copy of what I understand to be the approved layout plan. I got these directly from Mr. Kurtz, who was, I believe, part of the applicant and certainly the engineer on the prior approval. So I have almost enough for everybody. I wasn't expecting quite this many, but it's fine.
Now, you want, we'll have to mark one of these. Right. Or you can, the board secretary.
So this is turn this off?
Let her hand.
Maybe I need to change the batteries, hold on. If you could sign this one like that.
Batteries might have went.
Thank you.
Well, while we're doing batteries, I understand that to be the layout plan. It's a reduced copy of it, so I could get on 8.5 by 11, just the important part of what was previously approved, which was a 14,000 square foot lower level commercial or retail space, restaurants, et cetera. And I believe there were 2,000 square feet of office on the second level.
Right.
It was approved approximately 2007 or 2008. And essentially, they had the same constraints we did, which is 3 frontages, which makes it, and a triangular shape, which makes it a challenge to come up with something nice on the site. But
All right, so the,
No, that's not me. It might be the table.
all right, let's, I'd like you to go to what's our proposal now. We'll discuss the nature of the uses. I mean, we have our planner here, of course, but I want you to touch on that, and of course, the current site layout that we're looking at, how we're going to lay out the site, I should say.
Can't see it. Good enough for sort of.
All right, we're putting a board up, which is what page of A10?
Thank you very much. This is sheet 3 of A10. And I called it, it's entitled a variance plan because on it we tried to show the layout of all proposed improvements upon the site and identify all the variances and their waivers. Okay, so we are proposing an access to the point from Okerson Road at approximately the same plus or minus location as the earlier approval. As you enter the site, there's a stormwater management basin proposed on the right side or southwesterly side of the entrance driveway in essentially the same place that a stormwater management proposal or a basin was proposed on the earlier approval. We have a triangular shaped building that mimics the site. It's shaped differently than the last, so we'll just concentrate on what we're proposing now. This building is composed of a 2-story office space at its westerly corner. The middle of the building is 1-story, 30 feet tall warehouse space. And along the Highway 33 frontage, we have 7,460 square feet, 1-story commercial space. We are proposing on the plan to divide it into a maximum of 4 individual spaces, with the minimum space being 1,865 square feet, thereabouts. We recognize that your ordinance restricts that. This is substantially less division of space, if you will, than the prior approval, but it does require a variance because, if my recollection is correct, a building must be 40,000 square feet or more in gross floor area before it can be subdivided into different tenancies or uses. And this total building is approximately 25,000 square feet of gross floor area. Again, as you enter the site from Okerson Road, you can either, if you're in a large vehicle and need access to the loading area, okay, you can go straight and then make a left and run in a generally northeasterly direction parallel to Michael Curtin Lane, where we have a loading area. Most of the loading dock is enclosed within the extended footprint of the building, if you will. We have an overhead door proposed on that little indent in the building. We have adequate curb radii and adequate maneuvering room for a W60 design vehicle to pull past and back into the loading area and then pull forward. The far or southerly curb line, if you will, is approximately 112 feet from the door into the building. The 60 feet of loading area is taken up well within the footprint of the building. So,
now, will that be a sunken loading area?
yes, it is. That's correct.
There will be a dock back there?
Yes, it will be a 4-foot dock.
Okay.
Okay. If you enter again from Okerson Road and want to park, either for visiting the office or going around to the commercial space, you would make a left once you got in the driveway, circulate parallel to Okerson Road, or go to the northwest corner of the site and make a right and circulate across the front of the commercial space. There's a total of 53 parking spaces provided, 56 parking spaces provided. We have 2 spaces which are in a buffer area that more or less is across the street from what we think is an active farm. That requires a variance or waiver. However, did we identify that last handout?
Yeah. Did we give that an exhibit marking?
A12.
Thank you.
So if you look at A12, you'll see that there were probably more than 20, I never counted them exactly, parking spaces actually angled right along Michael Curtin Lane facing that. The only 2 spaces we have face the building and are on the far side. So we think we've tried to bring that more into conformance with the ordinance.
Is there proposed buffering along that area while we're talking about that?
Right, we have a setback of about 18 feet from the curb line of, 15 feet from the proposed curb line of Michael Curtin Lane. We are proposing to since it's paved and since we have indications that the borough or the township wants to continue using it, we are proposing curbing along the frontage of Michael Curtin Lane. No access points. All right, then behind the curbing in our area that's front yard, we have a 6-foot solid fence. It came to my attention in the course of reading the review comments from the engineer that the board actually required an 8-foot fence. Unless I didn't realize it was required. We have no problem putting an 8-foot fence there. We do have a variable depth, if you will, on the building side of the fence. The fence is pretty much level with Michael Curtin Lane. But the driveway, in order to get the loading dock that we were discussing, the driveway actually falls. It's pretty much flush with grade here. By the time you get into the loading dock, it's about 30 inches deep. And then, you know, it's fairly level going into the building. So if we had an 8-foot fence and 2.5 feet of drop, it effectively is 10.5 feet from the building side. You only see the 8-foot fence from the farm side or the residential couple residences that are north of the farm. So it would be a fairly decent screen. We've also proposed landscaping on both sides of the fencing to try to soften it.
Okay, now, do you know exactly where that farm is?
I believe that it's, if you look at my plan and you see the office space in the lower left corner of the building,
right,
and you go down to where it says Block 164, I believe that's part of the farm.
Okay, now, are you going to have adequate farmland buffer there?
We don't.
So you need a variance?
We need a variance or waiver from that requirement, correct.
Is there any way you could reshape that to where you don't need that?
No.
Not 50 feet.
Okay.
And Wendell, just so that you know, the prior approval, the parking spaces basically went right up to that property line.
No, I know. And
There's no buffer at all.
But I believe if you look back, I voted no because of the farmland.
That does not surprise me, since you have a very consistent track record with that. But I just want to let you know that the parking spaces in the prior approval went basically within a couple feet of that lot line
Right.
in the past.
Well, okay, if you take in consideration Michael Curtin Lane, the width of Michael Curtin Lane, and that 15-foot to their curb line, what is that?
It's more than 50 feet.
It's more than 50 feet?
65.
Yep.
The landscaping, though, is only on the inside of the fence currently. There's none on the outside of the fence, so the residents wouldn't see the landscaping.
Well, see, if I recall, because I was on the board, if I recall, the reason the 10-foot fence is to keep the headlights from going there. And that was my next question as far as the operation of the loading dock. Will that be done after hours or during hours, business hours?
I'm not the one to testify on that, I don't believe.
Okay.
It's my understanding that it's for this particular applicant who intends to occupy the building, that it would be during daytime hours, operation hours.
Well, excuse me. Sir?
Yes.
Will all deliveries to the whole facility be through that loading dock?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
What do you call deliveries to the commercial end and also to the office end? Will they be through that warehouse loading dock?
That was my intent, but I didn't think in terms of precluding a small step van or small van delivering to the front.
I noticed the doorways coming there. I guess they may be for fire exits, but I was just wondering if that's an access to the commercial areas.
Well, didn't show it. I don't remember if it's shown on the architectural plan, but I'm pretty much anticipating that there'd be a doorway near the lower right corner of the proposed commercial space that would go to the exterior, and that would allow people to walk behind the spaces and get to the refuse recyclable area, of which there's only one. It's not a convenient site to try to put refuse and recyclable storage areas in what you would normally consider convenient locations because of the 3 frontages. So we picked the frontage that would have the least amount of traffic and the most amount of fencing to screen it. Okay. and put it near where it would most likely be convenient for anyone that was using the building.
Well, how many, well, I guess that's going to come under the operations. I was going to say, how many trips is the recyclables or the garbage going to be picked up? Is that going to be on a daily? And I guess it's going to depend on what goes in those front buildings.
I think that's exactly it, Mr. Chairman. It's really hard to tell, but if it was by a private scavenger, as many pickups as necessary to accommodate the facility could be scheduled.
Right. But not only that, but if you got a restaurant in that front section, you know, the thing about it is, now you got food and everything else, it's going to be, you know, that usually goes into a dumpster.
I believe the earlier approval, not to cut short, but I believe the earlier approval contemplated a food, if not a restaurant. I don't believe that this septic system at this point, this is in a district that intends to be sewered physically at some point, but right now the sewer is remote from the site. So there will be a septic system when we show it on the lower right corner of the plan to service the building. I don't believe that we can size it in the space available to accommodate a restaurant use.
Okay.
Mr. Fitzgerald, or Mr. Hirsch, you have objection to putting it into the resolution that there will be no restaurant?
I believe that would have to be my client to answer that, or his attorney.
Well, that's why I kind of, well, either we can deal with that. I mean, there's a lot of items you've already touched on that there's no plans, there's nothing. Loading areas was one of the questions I had. How did the commercial get deliveries? There's nothing on the either architect plan to show how those interact. You're testifying, but you didn't say positive. You just said, I believe. I don't know.
It's my intent. It's my intent, and you're 100% correct. I wasn't trying to hedge. It's just the wording I used, but it's my intent that as much service as possible from a practical point of view have access or obtain from the rear yard area or the Michael Curtin Lane yard area.
You have to understand that could be critical to the approval by the board on how you get your deliveries, how you get things, and if, you know, you shouldn't want tractor trailers parked out front to try and unload. You don't even know what uses are going to go in there, so how do you know what kind of deliveries you're going to have?
You're 100% correct, except that this site is not well accommodating for tractor trailers on the Okerson Road or Highway 33 side. This easily accommodates tractor trailers, and it sort of makes sense. So it's easy to put a sign at the entrance, all trucks, all delivery vehicles, and restrict it to that area, and it would not be an imposition. I don't believe at this point that the warehouse use is going to be one of those intensive uses where you always have 2 or 3 tractor trailers hanging around at any given time. I think they're pretty much delivery for the contractors that are going to own and operate the major part of the building, which is the warehouse and the office that's adjacent to it.
But there's no connection from the warehouse space to the commercial, correct? So any delivery truck that shows up in the back there to that loading area is going to have to hump it all the way around the entire building.
What I was saying, I'm sorry, Jennifer, what I was saying was I anticipate there'll be a doorway here in this general area, so you could go in and access along the rear. It makes it a lot easier to temporarily park a vehicle here. If we put a little more concrete walk in there, it makes it easy to hand truck deliveries right into the site, and it's short and it's fairly flat.
Well, if there is an internal connection, then I would just respectfully request that the architectural plans be modified to reflect that connection.
Absolutely.
You know, my general experience is that people are lazy, and so they're not gonna take a long route to deliver. They're just not.
You're 100% correct.
So,
but it's also, I think, to go to the same point, and I don't disagree 1 ounce with what you're saying, people are lazy, and if there's delivery trucks occupying a fair amount of the parking, no one's going to go to the site.
How would they get out of there? Like,
well,
how would they even turn around?
It's not set up for that. You're
right.
100%. This is set up for deliveries.
Okay.
Okay, and if I'm a contractor, just as far as the applicant, if I have my offices there and that's my warehouse, I don't want that retail having access to my warehouse either. You know, so technically you're going to have a hallway that's going to divide off of that floor plan to service the retail.
I don't disagree. I agree with you. I know exactly what you're saying, and I was looking at that this afternoon and thinking, that's probably a really good modification to make.
And then you're also going to have fire-rated walls there.
Right.
From a warehouse to the office, and then from warehouse to retail.
Right.
That's all going to have to be fire-rated building.
I think the architect can testify as to the means by which it would be needed to be fire suppressed by an internal system also, and it largely depends on the use exactly. So,
If I might, Mr. Chairman, to answer two questions. One, there's no problem with the condition that there be no restaurant use. That was never the intent. It clearly couldn't work with the septic system to begin with, but even without the septic system, they're not seeking a restaurant use. All right, so we're clear on that.
Okay, you will agree to put that in the resolution?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
Yes, that's what I was
wanted to
answering his question.
Thank you.
About that. Yes, as a condition. And, yeah, I mean, if we need to show you the modification on the plan, I think my client was looking at having those spaces, because we don't know what's going to be in those spaces. They could be an office, flex space, or whatever, that there will be access from those spaces, the back of those spaces, into the warehouse.
Correct.
So the deliveries can come through the warehouse right through the doors to those places.
Right, so, but hey, you got to look at it. If I'm an owner of a construction company, be it electrical, be it plumbing, or whatever, I've got shelves in there that's loaded with my inventory. I don't want outside people to be able to just have free reign to my warehouse. So is that going to be partitioned off to where the only access they have is to the outside for their deliveries going into like a hallway or something? That's all my suggestion. And, honestly, you got hundreds, $200,000 worth of inventory in there. You don't want just any delivery person to be able to have access to my warehouse. That's all I'm saying. So if they use that loading dock, if they actually had received deliveries backing into that loading dock, all of that has to be taken into account. You're opening your whole warehouse up for deliveries for retail.
well, one of the things we can do to address that, Mr. Chairman, and I think it would make sense in a situation where things want to be flexible. Again, the architect can discuss it more, but the question I just asked him is, where would one need fire protection in the building? And it's at the walls that are separating the warehouse space from the other. So once you get through that doorway and into the warehouse area, that can be partitioned off with actual chain link fence panels or flexible walls, so that the space could be flexibly used and still meet the code as long as the appropriate walls are fire protected. And that would allow a hallway as necessary if it only went from, say, the lower right-hand space to the outside, or all the way along the back. It could be partitioned and changed over time, which makes the building more usable and more likely to succeed for a long run.
Okay. Jack, Jennifer?
Well, without seeing it, it makes it difficult. You've testified to it. Either how do we have to make a condition in the if it is approved, that the architect plans will relate to show the interconnection between the commercial establishments and the warehouse. We don't see that, but that would be a condition that would have to be in there, and whatever they're going to take up, the commercial, is going to reduce the size of the warehouse area for others.
And you're exactly correct, Jack. And we have no problem with any of that.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay. You can continue.
Okay. So,
One more question.
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
If the person comes in to make a delivery to the commercial area,
right,
and you put your chain link fence up, and it's all approved, where would that person park? I mean, I'm looking here at your site here, you got the trash and recyclable, you have the outdoor storage area, and you've got your curb. You're going to have to cut an area in there so they can park?
Well, the intent was, deliveries aren't typically for extended periods, so the intent that I thought was it could be worked in the lower right-hand corner of the loading areas. I said this is not going to be a dock that's used exclusively at least as we anticipate, with tractor trailers running in and out all day. It's really for the contractor, and he's going to testify the kind of materials they work with at this point, delivering those materials and receiving them. It was actually set up, if you look at the plan carefully, you'll see that because these retaining walls going in to the loading dock are approximately 3.5 feet tall, I actually fenced, well, one of the variances let me step back. One of the variances we require, or we are requesting, is for outdoor storage for the owners of the building along the southerly face of the building. Between that and a fence, which is helping to screen the building from the loading dock. So we actually have two fences. We have one along the Michael Curtin Lane right-of-way line, and then one along the retaining wall, which allows the grade to work for the interior loading dock. And I actually put gates at the corners, if you will, so that one could pull a pickup truck and back it right up to the retaining wall and load from the yard area into a pickup truck, because that's the scale of truck most used by the current applicants. So it would be possible to park in the southeasterly corner of the access drive to the loading dock. The other thing I was thinking in terms of, after I read Mr. Mallon's letter and some other criticisms, and I knew it was something that I had been thinking about, was if we could continue, I can shorten this refuse area. It's 21 feet wide. It could be easily shortened to 15, 16, 18. If I do that, there's enough room to make, say, a grasscrete path, which could support anything, so that if there was an emergency vehicle got into this space and it was a large one, one could continue on around the building and out this way, as opposed to having to try to make a turning movement in limited space. We have no problem making it.
Did the fire bring that up by chance?
Well, he had more brought up the requirement to, for the ordinance, to have 30-foot access driveways.
Right.
We don't propose 30-foot access driveways in the typical commercial parking areas, if you will. This driveway behind the service area, if you will, is 30 feet.
And then plus you have the Michael Curtin Lane also.
Well, yeah, we don't have an access to the site from that.
No, I know, but they could pull an
They could pull,
emergency
right.
truck there.
But we could make it so that if it was a need to come to this point, I recognized it earlier, I just hadn't worked out the details of making that turn, but I believe it can be done so that nobody is stuck with a hook and ladder truck trying to make a K-turn in a limited space.
Can you be running over part of your septic?
Well, there's nothing cast in stone. I was trying to show you the magnitude of the septic in terms of an area, but there's nothing cast in stone in terms of that rectangle at that exact spot. As long as my septic system is 10 feet off the property line, I was trying to put it here where the proposed grading would be relatively flat, but there's a septic bed can be angled, it can be stepped, it can be made to work to accommodate the more important thing, which is accommodating an emergency vehicle. So I have no problem with that. I just wanted you to get a sense of where the septic would be on the site relative to a well. We are on well also, and the well is over by the flagpole area, so there's plenty of separation as required. But we can make it, I think it's more important to have an irregular septic and a good circulation plan for emergency vehicles. I wouldn't want to make that a paved roadway necessarily. I think it would take away a lot from the looks, but we can certainly make it able to support anything. And outline it with bushes so that the path is actually clear for a driver.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The fire did cite that. They said the internal roadway width should be increased to 30 feet for proper apparatus, and said the roadway does not completely encircle the building, therefore making movements much more difficult.
Well, if they do a grass paver that's capable.
Well, that's fine, but what do I do with my refuse area?
No, they were talking about shortening it or either turn it the other direction.
Well, go out to 33?
No, Jack, what we were talking about was right now the refuse area is 21 feet wide as you approach it head-on and 13 feet deep. 21 feet wide it could be 16 feet wide without much problem and still hold 3 dumpsters. Okay, so if I make that 16 feet, then I have 14 feet to the right of it with which a truck could pass. And that's what I was suggesting, is we can make that work so that we can outline the pathway, make it support vehicles, and also the refuse would work.
Mr. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
you guys have had these review letters, like the one I'm looking at is from December.
Correct.
And yet we're testifying on the fly on all these changes.
Yes.
Which are significant, in my opinion. I don't understand why you didn't resubmit plans. Why didn't you address these issues and resubmit plans so that we could be talking about something that we have had the opportunity to actually look at?
Okay, well, I didn't really envision that as complicated, but having said that, I reached out to Mr. Mallon to try to have a meeting 2 months ago, and our schedules just didn't accommodate it, so I really...
But yet, I haven't heard from you. You haven't reached out to me at all.
I apologize.
I'm just saying, I just feel like we're redesigning this site on the fly, and it's a use variance.
Yeah.
And I have issues with this bump out on the corner that requires a variance, that the architectural plans show nothing in, so what's the point of it? And I just feel like we're redesigning this site on the fly, and it's not our responsibility to do that.
Correct.
It's their responsibility. They're here for a use variance.
Well, no one's asking the board to redesign the site. Questions?
Yeah, but
If
we
I-
are.
With all due respect, we are.
We are.
And these are issues that have been in writing for months and months and months, and quite frankly, you were supposed to be here last month, and the notice was deficient, so you had a whole nother month, with yet nothing has changed. We have sent applicants home for less. This is a significant use variance. They need relief on various issues, and I just don't feel comfortable. We're redesigning the site as we go. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Is there enough room for the septic? I don't know. We have 4 shown commercial tenant space, plus warehousing, plus an office. We don't, we're gonna maybe shorten up the refuse, maybe not. What's the outdoor storage for? It's a lot on the fly, and respectfully, I don't feel comfortable. I think this should be...
Respectfully, the only thing that I see that we're changing is adding the circulation plan for the driveway right here that's been, I mean...
That's a significant issue, as is the fire issues, which have been in writing for months. So like my position is that if we're gonna be redesigning the site, they should redesign it and come back to us. Because I can't give you my opinion on this, based upon conversation. Like, they need to put it in writing and show it to us. And respectfully, and I'm going to direct this at the architect who's yet to get up, I don't understand that bump out on the corner. There's nothing showing on your plans that show why you need it, and you need relief because of it. So, in my opinion, it's unnecessary and should go away.
Well, let me answer that, because I'm the one that created that design for the bump out, because it's an exceptionally difficult building to deal with on an exceptionally difficult site. So what we try to do is make each of the 3 entrances kind of stand out and be featured. And the landscaping kind of works with that. And if, I'm not going to present the architectural plans, but if you look at them carefully, you'll see that that really does work.
I don't agree. So I am looking at them
But
carefully.
you are
They
not an
don't show
architect.
much.
That's the difference.
And what I'm saying is that you need a variance for that. So
Right.
to me, I just feel like we're spinning our wheels, and I can't, you're going to say to me at the end of the day, what's your opinion? And my opinion right now is I have no opinion because I need to see these changes in writing.
Well,
because-
in fairness again, Jennifer, we need a variance for 3 feet of that corner.
You're right. And so I don't think you need the 3 feet. And that's my point. So you're telling me you need a variance because you want a defined entrance? In my opinion, it's not a goal of zoning that you're advancing. So, and I know Mr. Higgins is here and he hasn't testified and what have you, but I just feel like you're putting a lot on the board in conversation, and you need to put it on paper and give it back to them. That's my opinion. Because I feel like you're asking us, them, to opine on whether a use variance for this is appropriate, and they don't have what they need in front of them to say, I feel comfortable. That's my opinion.
But what we're getting is input,
Mr.
like yours
Fitzgerald,
now, like Mr. Collins.
I'm entitled to my opinion, thank
Right,
you.
no
And so
question.
that's my professional opinion to the board.
Exactly. Mr. Tropley, you were...
Mr. Chair, I think, why don't we take 5 minutes and let Mr. Hirsch discuss it with his professionals, but I think what Jennifer said is something that the board needs to consider.
I agree.
But why don't we just take 5 and have a break and then let Mr. Hirsch just discuss it further with the professionals. I mean, quite frankly, I'd like to continue, but I don't see how you have the information in front of you. But again, I'm not...
But I would like to, Mr. Tropley, for during this 5 minutes, for our professionals to get together and kind of make a list of what we need before the board? You know, if we do adjourn this and carry it, what we need.
It certainly looks like we're headed in that direction.
I agree.
Okay. Why don't we just take whatever break we need, take a 10 or 15-minute break?
Okay, let's take a 15-minute break.
Thank you.
Okay.
The board will now recess.
Okay, Eileen.
The board will now reconvene.
Okay, Mr. Hertz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make a couple of comments, and we'll decide where we're going. We, of course, as professionals, looked at the reports that we received, the planning report from CME, authored by someone other than your current planner, and the engineer's report. And there was a lot of questions raised, you know, type of testimony, which is typical. You all in this field do this work. What should be discussed, the parking requirements, the nature of the use, how the operation is going to work. We came prepared to do all of those things. It's not unusual that there might be a change or a new idea come up during an application. Didn't necessarily mean it was going to be a vote tonight. Obviously, you know, they wanted to see new architectural plans, so be it. You know, we would naturally work with the board, making sure they had all the information they needed before the vote. So I think Mr. Fitzgerald was covering a lot of issues. He was offering some alternatives on one site issue. There's certainly a lot more than that relative to this application. Your planner has indicated her concerns about certain aspects of the building and justifying certain variances, which we hadn't even gotten to yet. But these are things that come up. And when we presented the testimony, as we would have, about the architectural enhancement to the building, if your planner's opinion and the board's opinion was, no, that's a variance. You know, we don't care about that architectural enhancement. We'd rather get rid of the variance. All right? So we cut that part of the building down. I mean, this is the kind of give and take you get in applications. Sometimes we try one thing, the board doesn't like it, or your professionals don't like it. Fine. It doesn't mean that we then have to vote. We say, fine, we'll come back and we'll redo that. Okay? And then we'll come back to you. But, you know, we have reasons for doing things sometimes that it takes the full presentation before it's all understood. But we're a little concerned about, you know, the atmosphere that we may have now and the concerns the board may have that we're unprepared, although we think we were prepared. And I was going to have my applicant testify to the nature of the operation, what their business is, how many deliveries they get, all of these questions that might have had some relevance to some of these issues. But I'm now instructed by my client that we would ask the board if they would to carry it, and we'll come back at another date at the board's convenience when you give us the date.
Okay, Mr. Hertz, I would like our professionals to go ahead and kind of give you a list of some other things. You know, I know it's in the review letter, but let's put it on the record. Even
I appreciate that, Mr.
You know,
Chairman.
let's get it on the record. That way, whenever you do come back,
yes,
we address a lot of their concerns, and then, quite frankly, some of the board's concerns that's already been brought out. And then that way, whenever you do come back, now you know what we're looking for.
Sure, and we did see the reports, and we were prepared to address a lot of those concerns in the reports as we got through our testimony, but certainly hearing from the board, their concerns, this is what applicants want to hear.
Exactly.
So we know what's in your minds.
Okay, sir.
And
okay, we'll start with Jennifer, or Mr. Tropoli. I saw you pulling your mic down.
I think Jack has the list, I think.
And I think the first thing you want to look at is the fire review.
Right.
Most applicants we've had before, they get a letter like that, the first thing they do is they call the fire marshal and meet with him. And so he maybe can do a retractable letter and change, well, we can accept the 25-foot. I will tell you this, in the past we've had some, because you've got streets, they may waive the 25-foot and they may waive the travel around, but judge on the plans. But somebody's got to go meet with them and talk to them. We don't make that decision. That's the first thing. That's going to be critical. The other item we talked about was deliveries and loading areas. I mean, you know, your architect's plans don't show, I mean, I tell you what, they're minimal. Not to beat up Mr. Fitzgerald, but they're minimal. Believe me. There also is requirements in the ordinance about articulation. where you have to, you can't have solid walls so long. We did cite those. I know the planner's letter and my letter said that. I mean,
Again,
those
a lot of
are
these we
things.
were going to address, but I
Okay?
appreciate that.
There's nothing on the plans at all about signs. They're going to put signs up? Are there going to be signs? Are they going to be on the building? Are they going to be out? Is it going to be freestanding? There's nothing there on signs. The landscape architect raised issues, and it's in the ordinance, about screening, but parking goes along streets, where you're along 33, that you've got to have a continuous 3-foot-high hedgerow. That's not on the plan. And I'm going to steal some of what they're saying, but those are some of the things that they're looking at.
Thank you.
We talked about the fence, and Mr. Fitzgerald said he didn't see the 8-foot, but the last time they wanted an 8-foot fence along that line.
10-foot.
He testified he would do it. But the board asked them to do plantings between there and the right-of-way so as to screen that area. But you had to have township approval to put those plantings in. They wanted some sort of screening. Your plan is different.
That was the prior application.
That was the prior application. But, I don't know if anybody was prepared to address that issue. I raised it in my letter. The storage areas, we asked you about the storage areas. What's going to be in there? Screening. The landscape architect raised issues about screening it and what type of plants to put in front to screen that. The other thing is, it is an outdoor storage in the front yard. I mean, I agree, you don't have any choice. You're all front yards. But those are some of the things that I look at. I can't ask you whether the board can make the decision on fence in the basin. Show the roof runoff and how it ties into the basin. You have a retaining wall within 5 feet of the property line. Once you go over 30 inches, well, that's a variance.
We know that.
Oh, okay, well,
We read the reports. We do
but those
understand
are
that.
things.
I appreciate that.
Those are things. You got a letter from DOT that acknowledged the receipt. Has anybody approached DOT to see whether there's going to be any contribution needed, as the previous applicant had, for changing the light signal? I think it was at Howell Road. Your whole site needs a 50-foot buffer, everything.
Around the entire perimeter.
Around the entire perimeter. All site plans need 50-foot buffer along all roads, along all residential zone properties. Yes, I agree, you don't have a choice, but you are developed, pretty much. You did take some of the plantings off of Michael Curtin to do, but those are things that are raised, part of the testimony. Outdoor storage, multi-tenant, there's nothing you can do. Of course, you don't have any idea what tenants there are, so it's hard. Sometimes when you ask for a use variance and the board doesn't know what type of tenants, I mean, is it going to be retail? I mean, I tell you what, if you put a Dollar General in there, you got a mess trying to get deliveries. But you don't know. But that could go in there. Because I don't know what's in the area. But I'm just trying to express some of the items that I had listed in my letter. But, loading in the front yard, but that's it. Parking, lighting's another thing. You do exceed the foot candles, but that's pretty common. I will say that. We get that all the time. Sidewalks along the front. Your plan doesn't determine whether there's sidewalks along the entire commercial site. It looks to me like they stop and start, stop and start. And I just wonder whether sidewalks should be around the entire building so that people could go from one to another.
Internally, you're talking about?
No.
On the street?
From the building, between the building and the parking lot. If you look at your plans, the way I interpret it, you're only doing it in front of a certain building and an entrance.
Okay.
It's not continuous, just by the way I read the plan and the dots. Those are things. We did ask a question about the accessory with the trash and storage and how people get to that. It seems like that's a long way for people to go. As Jen raised the issue, people are lazy. They're not, what are they going to do? I think I've given you a pretty good idea. And I basically just went through my list. I always go through my list and I make a small list as so I have to page through, and as they address it, I check it off. So, that's pretty much what I had. I don't
We hope to
know.
address those tonight, and we'll
No.
address them next time. Thank you.
Now, I didn't deal with any of the planning issues,
I know.
which will come. But, and I did steal some of Sherry's thunder, but hers is she's pretty straightforward in her review, man. She tells you, this works, this don't work, these trees are too close together, they're not gonna work, just do this. I mean, Sherry almost designs the site for you, I will say.
We will always work with anybody on the landscaping, the type of trees, the town wants.
Not to counteract
Landscape
Mr.
architect,
Fitzgerald, but
we always work with that.
I don't remember him contacting me. If he did once, I didn't have it. I might have asked him to call me back. But I'll tell you what, I have a pretty good reputation of meeting and talking with everybody. And I very rarely don't get together with anyone. I make my schedule pretty open. And I've been here a couple of years, so my reputation is there.
Well, I think you and Mr. Fitzgerald have both been at it a long time, and as I have, and I
Right.
don't think anyone's questioning anybody's reputation.
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
I'm running out
Mr.
of
Mallon,
breath.
I just wanted to ask, I saw in your review letter, the fence around the detention basin, it really depends on what the outflow is, going out. I think it looks like they're probably going to be 3 feet. It's only going to be able to hold about 2 foot of water in the bottom before it outflows. And then now all of that goes down to the large, that's been previous approved on other sites.
Actually, I didn't have a problem with the drainage. They pretty much followed the same thing. This concept was approved in '06.
Right.
And right around the time with the subdivision, all that area, the concept of the drainage, all worked together.
Right.
And it all ended up going down ultimately to the basin before Burke's Creek.
Correct.
But that's all. And they followed pretty well that was all thing. I just want to know what's going to happen with the roof runoff. Are they going to tie it in?
Right.
I like to see it on the plan.
Okay.
I want to see what they're going to build.
Okay, but what I'm getting at, as far as a fence, I don't think we need a fence.
Well, I always let the board decide,
Right.
There's always, one
It's
guy
up to the
says,
board, but
well,
I'm
you want
just
to
saying.
you want to keep them out, and then the next thing says you put a fence up. When they're in there, then we can't get in to rescue them, and it's always the two sides.
Well, the thing
But
about
usually,
it is, at any one time, I don't think you're gonna have more than two.
usually when we have no residential, we don't fence them,
Right,
usually.
right, and that's gonna be buffered to the farm anyway, so.
Right. I'll pass to Jennifer if she got any more comments.
I would just like to point out the comments about the facade of the buildings. This board has been very consistent. We have requirements that any building length more than 50 feet needs articulations, they need a change in facade, and, that's going to need to be addressed, because there's 2 sections of the ordinance, 228C and 228D, that require changes to the architecture. I would also recommend that, the architectural plans, which, I had more than enough time to look at, provide limited information, and certainly don't justify the relief that's required. So that's going to need some work moving forward. I agree with Jack on the sidewalk issue. And, I would just go through those letters, and the things that can be cleaned up should be cleaned up. We have things like notes should be added, the building height required should be added to the zoning table. The landscaping plan, I think Shari, it needs some work. So I think that there's a lot of little cleanup items that are located in this letter that, again, I did not prepare, but instead of going back and reinventing the wheel, I've been using this letter as a guide, but at the end of the day, the letter has been out there for a while, and the items in there should be addressed before coming back. And I just also want to add that there's a 2.5% required development fee for affordable housing that the applicant's going to have to pay, and that's going to be based on the equalized assessed value, 50% at building permit, 50% at CO.
Mr. Chairman, we've heard from your experts, we've seen
Yes,
the
sir.
reports, many of the things Mr. Mallon reviewed, obviously, we're aware of, and we're going to address tonight the best we could.
Okay.
And we will take all of those comments, again, under advisement, and we will try to make some revisions and submit those.
Thank you,
Whenever
sir.
you give me a date, we'll make sure
Okay.
they're in with sufficient amount of time for your experts to
Okay.
have them, prior to the meeting.
And then also, Mr. Fitzgerald, please have your professionals, if they need any clarification, reach out to Jennifer and Jack and Sherry. Don't hesitate.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I recommend they start with the Fire Bureau.
Right.
That's where you'd start. That'll get you your thing about whether you got to do 30-foot aisles and whether you do need circulation. They're pretty good on that. They'll sit and meet with you. You can call, get an appointment, and they'll sit and discuss with you. And then they'll give them maybe a revised letter, which may change some of the attitude. But right now, we're only going what their comments were.
And then the other thing, Mr. Mallon, I want to bring up, I know they're asking for a waiver of traffic, but I think they need that because it was very extensive at the first application, the traffic reports, because there was a queuing issue at Howell Road in Route 33. There was a big queuing issue, and the previous applicant was going to work with the DOT to do a re-queue of that Howell Road light because of the ingress and egress of the site coming off of, Okerson Road there.
Yes, we did look into that, and we will present, not tonight, obviously, but
No, I
we will
agree.
present information concerning that. And that was, and we read that in that condition, the resolution, that they would, because an access permit's not required, we checked, but that they could address it to DOT, and the board indicated, well, DOT says we're not interested, then it wasn't going to affect the approval, but they would ask. But yes, we've been looking into that also.
Okay, sir.
As many of the other things we have looked into them. and
All I'm
we
trying
will
to do is
address
give you the information so when you are here next time, we can move right on through.
I appreciate that, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
sir. Okay, Eileen, Mr. Tropoli?
Yes, thank you. We're looking at our schedule. Tom, it looks like with the work that the board has requested and the professionals, we have kind of a full agenda coming up in the next month or so. This looks like June 11th.
June 11th?
June 11th. That should give you plenty of time to accommodate the board's requests. No further public notice required. We would need an extension of time through at least June 30th.
I grant that on the record. If you need it in writing, you'll.
That's fine on the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, June 11th?
June 11th, and I believe that'll be the first case.
7:30, and you are going to grant, for the record,
Yes, I
extension.
put that on the record, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one more.
Yes, sir.
Not knowing what's going to remain change, I would ask for plans by May 21st. You have a holiday in the middle there, but I would think that would be enough time. Gives us almost, 2 weeks to do the review, because then we like to have our reviews to the board a week in advance.
Yeah, you need enough
So
time.
that's a Monday, so if you have to work the weekend, just so you know.
Boy, getting it from all sides. Now we're working weekends.
Okay, case number BA 17-15, Seafree Plaza LLC will be carried to June 11th, 7:30 with no further notice. Also, an extension of time has been issued to
June 30th.
June 3rd, or what?
30th.
June 30th.
June 30th.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hurt.
Thank you for your time and your patience.
Yes, sir.
That's what's.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the vouchers? Motion to approve? Motion by Mr. San Clemente.
Thank those.
Seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Okay, any other further business of the board? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Amata, seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Zoning Board adjustment adjourns 9 o'clock p.m.